Hello, and welcome to Podclash. This week's guest is Edward Clancy.
Thank you for that introduction, Ed.
Oh my god.
Was that alright for you?
Yeah, that was really good. I'm glad you finally made it onto the show after we've upgraded your computer from 2014 operating system to where it is now.
It's 6 hours, 5 hours and 59 minutes since when we scheduled this meeting.
Yeah.
How long has it been since you've upgraded your, or updated
Well, we
your
started
MacBook?
this conversation at 10:15 this morning, so more than 6 hours now, right? And we started at 10:15, it's now 4 o'clock. It's taken that long to update my MacBook, and Microsoft Office has all stopped working now.
Oh, nightmare.
Well, just to give everyone a little bit of background, we tried to start this podcast at 11, and at 20 to 12 we figured out that Ed hadn't updated his computer in a number of years, so we couldn't do a group call for the video. You can watch us on YouTube now, by the way.
Yeah. Where have you guys been at anyway? I haven't seen you for a while.
mate, we're in charge of the narrative here. You can't just take over the podcast.
Fair enough.
But since you said that, let's start with the news. So there's not much news going on. Well, I've got quite a lot of news actually. So
mate, there's loads of. I'm going to make the narrative. It's like coronavirus. Tell us about coronavirus.
Apparently, I've had coronavirus. Yes. So basically, the other day I was out on my bike and I crashed pretty hard. I was basically just blowing my nose, ended up in the gutter, and so I got a scan because there was some stuff going on with my urine. They thought I was bleeding into it or something. And they gave me a full CT scan, and they found something called ground glass, which
in your urine?
No, in my chest.
What?
On the CT scan, so that points towards coronavirus. So this is this is 7 days of isolation just over. I went to the shops today. It was quite nice.
Wow, that's mate. Yeah. How did you enjoy total isolation then?
Oh, it's been awful, mate. I've been trying everything to get over it, but the boredom just seeps in. My brother bought Hungry Hippos the other day because he thought that'd be a good game.
Yeah, the board game, yeah.
Yeah, but mate, literally, well, yeah, it's interesting for a minute at best, but it's literally just whack the board as hard as you can for as long as you can, and then that's it, isn't it?
You also bought yourself a little gym, haven't you? Which you have.
Yes, I have bought myself a gym. No, I've used bits of it. I'm training my mum at the moment.
How's that going?
Yeah, it's going well. It's going well, thank you. But yeah, no, I bought myself a gym for the fraction of the price of what Phil paid for his. And
how much did you pay for yours?
I don't know, probably under 500 quid.
That's a lie. You said your bar alone cost 600 quid.
No, the bar cost 200.
Have you been in your gym today, Phil?
No, I had a day off today. I've been in it pretty much every day. Probably going this after this, to be honest, because I've got nothing else to do. Yeah.
I heard you've been using a very fancy barbecue today, Phil.
Yeah. To be fair, I've been cooking on it every day. Just fry up a few sausages and a bit of chicken. Easy.
That's Phil's news.
That's what happens.
The news with Phil Hines.
I know.
Yeah. Do you have any other news?
No, not really.
How's Carlisle life treating you?
Yeah, it's good. There's nothing going on. I've just been in isolation for the last 3 weeks, so I've literally left the house 3 times, maybe. Probably 5 times in total with the road ride included. So, yeah. Yeah,
well, what can you do? We're all sat inside, aren't we? To be honest, it's not that much different, is it? For a lot of cyclists. You you stay inside. Once a week, you make a trip to Aldi, you get some shopping, and then you go out on your bike and train. It's unusual that we're not going to Portugal. There's no track sessions. Apart from that, I don't know. It's just forced, isn't it? So even if you did want to go do something or see people, you can't. Did you
go to the pub before it shut?
No, of course not. I'm tempted to say, mate, that I'm thriving in isolation. I genuinely, it's really not affected me, but I don't know, it's tough, isn't it? And I appreciate it does, affect a lot of people pretty bad. So, we can't make light of these things, can we, really? It's just tough times all around, man. And there's a lot of people out there suffering. There's a lot of businesses, a lot of people without jobs, and yeah, I'm kind of looking forward to it all being over one day.
Yeah, for sure. So let's crack on with the podcast after the news is finished. Just to properly introduce Ed for anyone who doesn't know who he is, probably one of the most successful Olympic team pursuers that's ever lived. Gold in Beijing, gold in London, gold in Rio, and targeting gold in Tokyo 2021. Welcome.
Cheers, boys. Is this your first ever webinar? Is this what you call it?
Now, we got Dave Smith on the phone last week.
Ah, decent. Yeah.
But we didn't do video or anything like that. But he's doing really well. But I thought the kind of first bit to set off on was what you've obviously been on the podcast before, and it's our most listened to episodes. Phil and I also voted it as the best episode of 2019.
Wow.
Along with Chris Pritchard. Actually, Phil, I'm not sure if you actually said Ed's was the best.
I said Ed was the best, yeah.
Well, now that we've landed off that, tell us a bit more about kind of Clancy Briggs. So since we last spoke to you, that's kind of launched properly and publicly. How's that growing and developing? You've got a really nice bike behind you and a T-shirt all branded up.
Oh, yeah. Well, until very recently, it was flying along. It was doing really well. Sam Briggs, Graham Briggs' other half. To be fair, she's been instrumental in the whole thing right from the word go. She sort of approached me with this idea that we'd try and get 100 kids from the very start, even for day one. And I told her she was a lunatic, we'd never do it. But as it happened, we were pretty close. I think we had 85, 90 kids or something in the first week, and then the numbers are growing and growing over the first couple of months, and I don't think we had a single person that turned up and didn't like it or dropped out. And then we were very much looking forward to, kind of keeping things going in that direction through the spring and then the summer, and then off the back of the Olympics and Tour de France, we were like, wow, we're going to be really up to something good here. We'd just done a piece with Look North, which is the BBC local news around here, and it was just as the coronavirus was kicking off, and as you can imagine, 98% of the news was all doom and gloom and the stock market crashing and coronavirus and X, Y, and Z. And they did this amazing piece with this. They give us 3.5 minutes of airtime, and it was just all so positive. And the journalist dude that was there, did ask me about the Olympics and coronavirus and all that, but not a single second of that made the air. It was just all about the kids and the academy. And yeah, and half an hour later, we had to announce that we were closing it down because all the schools are shutting, all the sports, the leisure centres around Doncaster and Yorkshire were all closing. So it was a shame. We just had word that week from British Cycling that they were going to let us look after their talent identification thing in the area. What's it called? I forget the name of it. Talent development in the area. So, we were getting some good progress, and we were starting to look at other franchises, and we still are. So, yeah, it's a shame we've had to postpone it, but the good news is that I think, when this is all over, hopefully it'll be in the middle of summer, it'll be 25 degrees every day, and we'll be able to just kick off where we left off. And I honestly think in long term it'll be a good thing, and it's something I'm proud to be part of.
So what's the kind of basic bread and butter kind of day-to-day of Clancy Briggs? Is it kind of scheduled sessions? Do you go into schools? What's the bread and butter of it?
Well, basically both. So we've got the Doncaster. So at the side of the Doncaster Dome, which is if you grow up round here, it's a big swim and a nice skating centre. It's like a leisure complex. And there's a £5 million cycle track, a paved road circuit at the side of it now. And there's a lot of them up and down the UK. So we kind of launched it there as that was our base venue. And it's basically like all sorts of things, swim babies or mini kicks. There's these academies for everything, like football, cricket, golf, rugby, tennis, you name it. They've all got an academy. So for kids that want to get involved in sport, there's obviously the British cycling sort of route and all that. But I just think that we're trying to deliver something which is just fun, The key purpose is just getting people on bikes. It's not necessarily, we call it an academy, but I think that can be potentially misleading. We're just looking at getting kids on bikes, fun on bikes. It's just an alternative to Instagram and PlayStations and all that. So what is it? You turn up with your bike, and we run 45-minute sessions at the Doncaster Dome, Monday, Wednesday, Fridays, after school hours. We also deliver it in a school called Ramby at the school as well. So we'd start to do it actually on the school grounds. And I think potentially that's where we've got more room to grow as like an after-school club. And then we need to start looking at how we can teach this on the curriculum in school time. And like I said, there's literally dozens and dozens and dozens of these paved cycle circuits across the UK going unused. And, I think we can make use of them.
Yeah, well, it's good that BC are backing you in that sense as well, because obviously there's been a lot of kind of bad news surrounding kind of HSBC pulling out and maybe that affecting grassroots. So it's good. It's a bit of good news that you guys are in there to try and take up a bit of that slack in the north, anyway.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I don't know if we're on that sort of scale yet, but
well, you sound ambitious enough trying to get in the curriculum.
Oh yeah, big time. Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's as hard as you've got to be able to. I think it's quite common now in PE lessons in schools for people to come in and coach the kids in school time. As long as they're competent and they've got the appropriate certificates and education and so on, I believe it's. We're just trying to create a big win-win scenario for everyone. There's a reason this hasn't been done before. It's not as easy as turning up with a transit van and 30 footballs in the back and a couple of semi-pro footballers, or whatever you want to call them. It's difficult logistically to have, a van turn up with, potentially 40 or 50 grand's worth of kits with ramps and cones and bikes and stuff like that. And there's a reason it hasn't been done before. It ain't easy, but I think, hopefully between myself and Graham and Sam, we've got the contacts to kind of make that happen. And, when you tell people what we're about and what we're trying to do, there's a lot of people that behind it. Put it this way, everyone can see that the UK cycling scene is struggling at the moment. And really that's kind of come on over the last 2 seasons, I think. It's hard to approach a sponsor and say, give us £1 million to go run a UK-based cycling team that's hopefully going to do the Tour of Yorkshire and Tour of Britain. But, if you approach someone asking for a tiny, tiny, tiny fraction of that and say, this isn't about an elite cycling team that's going to get better airtime. This is about trying to create a better future for the kids. And, if you can, it's a much easier sell.
Yeah, well, you see people diversifying with that kind of stuff, because we had Camden Jeffers on saying that his main income stream isn't from the cycling, it's from being a YouTuber and all that kind of stuff. And Phil was very interested to see how he made money out of that. Talking of amazing contacts, has Phil hooked you up with his girlfriend yet? She's a primary school teacher.
No, not yet. I'm talking to Phil though about getting him a Clancy Briggs franchise up there. So there's a cycling circuit in Carlisle, right?
Well, that's good because.
Yeah. So I mean, Callum, this is the way I see it, and I've probably got a lot more ambition than talent right now. But in an ideal world, you'd approach someone like Phil, like an ex-cyclist that's got a good name, and you say, right, there's a cycle circuit there. You make that your base, and then you can coach out of there every Saturday morning, and you stick it on the website. It's easy enough to add another link to it now. Well, I'm going to make the cats come in.
You could bring him into shot if you want. There he is. Hello, Mr. Boris.
Here he is. Yeah, sorry, guys. So, you approach like a good ex-cyclist like Phil. Say, all right, mate, this is your area now. And you want to base it here. You want to coach them Saturday, Sunday on the cycle track. And then you want to start looking at schools in the area and, coaching in schools after school time. And, the idea would be that, we bring the bikes to them and we bring all the kit and, essentially, I believe we've done all the hard work, so it should be a pretty straightforward job for someone like Phil to get onto it, recruit a few local coaches, and do something useful.
What about Callum? He wants a franchise as well.
Yeah, if he's interested, of course. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'll give it a shot. Why not?
So how has coronavirus affected Clancy Briggs then? I guess you can't. There's no income coming in.
Yeah, absolutely. We're in the same position as an awful lot of businesses and companies. As soon as coronavirus hit, something like us, we, you can't make it up. It's like we teach kids, like groups of kids, after school in school grounds and out of leisure centres, right? So naturally, as soon as the leisure centre closed and the schools closed, we closed. Boom. And, you know, and whether we wanted to or not, like, first things first, you couldn't do it in the first place because it's socially irresponsible. But we physically couldn't do it. So, of course, every bit of your income stops. I guess the good news is when you're a small startup business like us, you've got fairly little outgoings. And as soon as you've stopped, almost all of your outgoing stops. So we're in a fortunate position from that point of view. And, you know, when it kicks off again, it's just a case of, like, unfreezing everything you've stopped. And you should just kick off from where...
yeah, I think it'll go pretty well, mate, because you got all these parents at the moment that are sick and tired of homeschooling their kids. They're going to be desperate to get them out of the house and pan them off to you guys for a couple of hours.
Yeah, I hope so, yeah. I hope so, yeah. I really think it's gone to a good thing, and, like, you know, it's been growing well, and yeah, it was a tough week, to be honest, because pretty much in that same 7 days, it was like we had to stop Clancy Briggs, and then there was a whole, like, Olympic thing hanging over your head, and, like, is it not? And you're kind of being told by the official lines that the Olympics is still going ahead, and then, you know, it inevitably, perhaps it was it's now been postponed for a year. So it's a big week, you know. There's a lot of information to take on.
Well, let's touch on that now then. So, yeah, obviously with the Olympics being postponed by a year, that meant a bit more to you than it did to other people. You know, you're already apparently, I don't know who gave you this name, but do you call yourself the granddad of the team?
I don't know.
The Daily Mail called you the granddad of the team anyway, and it put it in quotation marks.
I must have said it in one interview, but yeah, there you go. What can you do? I don't mind, you know. I am old.
But it's that difference of, like, extending it by a year. It does make a big difference to you when you were planning to retire after it initially being in 2020.
Yeah, for sure. I guess, you know, if you're 22, it essentially just make one Olympic cycle slightly longer and the next one a bit shorter. For someone like me, it's kind of, especially in your head as well, you almost start gearing up for, like, boom, like, we've got 4 more months to go. And literally, I've got, like, a diary on my MacBook here, and it's like, I had, like, a running countdown of how many months and how many weeks and how many days to go. And it's like, boom, right, we've got 3 Portugal camps, and you're just about to get ready to tick one off, and it's like, no, well, actually, there is no Portugal camps this year. There's no Olympics this year, and it's all going to happen in another 12 months' time. And to answer your question, sorry, yeah, it's when you're 35, I was 35 in March. So by the time the Olympics come around, I'm going to be 36 and a half. Now, of course, you can still learn, you can still improve, but there's potentially an awful lot more people out there that are in, like, the young and the mid-20s that are going to make an awful lot more gains. So it ain't going to be easy, but, you know, I don't think anyone ever said winning a 4th straight gold medal was going to be easy. So no surprises there. There's an awful lot of people around me sort of saying, it's going to be postponed, it's going to be postponed. And I was like, nah, it'll go ahead. I'm just mindful. I hear the rumours all the time. You hear rumours about things happening and not happening. And yeah, to be honest, probably part of my downfall on that was that I just don't really keep up with the news and the media that much. And in my head, it was like, wow, you know, the Chinese are already starting to go back to work and they're starting to go back to business and back to normal life. So I was like, surely we'll just follow suit. Yeah, but do you know what I mean? There's members of our team that look at the projections and, like, look at scientific reports on how it's going to spread. You know what I mean, Phil?
Who's that?
Kian. And you know, if you'd have asked a guy like him 3 months ago, he'd have said, "Nah, it's not going ahead." But yeah, as it happens, you know, in hindsight, it's kind of easy to see that it would just be impossible to make it happen this year, I think. And I'm no expert now, but I think the chances are, if coronavirus, even if coronavirus isn't hitting us particularly hard in June, July, and August, then it's probably going to be hitting some other poor country pretty hard at that point in time.
I just imagine you not watching the news and somehow organising a house party for tomorrow or something like that.
What?
Guys,
I'm not that bad, but it does catch me out sometimes. You know, if I'm going to be totally honest, like, I didn't even know, like, the rules until Phil properly explained them to me, like, a couple of days ago.
You didn't know there was a lockdown.
Well, when the first set of rules came out, you were still allowed to go out and meet people, right?
Yeah.
One person, you're allowed to meet up in a group of two.
Yeah.
So I assume, like, you know, when you're living on your own, and if there's somebody else that lives on your own, you could go out and meet them on your bikes. As it happened, you can't. Yeah.
Yeah.
The new world is tricky.
Not that I ever did that, but you can't do that, yeah. Yeah.
Mate, Derbyshire police are going to be all over you.
Yeah, they totally should, like, you know, anyone that goes out, it is an issue, isn't it? And again, I don't know how much of this stuff's like fake news, but guess who? Kian's been sending through WhatsApps to the group today, just showing pictures of people just like gathering round in groups in London and stuff. And
what's Kian doing in London?
you know what Kian's doing? He'll be sat in isolation in his flat above Sainsbury's, won't he? But
well, that is the thing. Like, we talk about people being able to adjust to isolation well and adjust to it badly, but a lot of athletes, especially Kian, wouldn't actually notice much of a difference.
No,
mate, that boy will be thriving. He'll just go from like he'll walk downstairs, go shopping in Sainsbury's once a month, and then walk back up, play GTA 5 for the next 29 days, and off he goes.
Well, that's a busy day for them. Like, I call him up and he'll go like, "Oh, I'm so busy," and I'm like, "What have you got?" And he goes, "I need to go to the post office and play Fortnite." And I'm like, "What's the best day for you?"
Yeah, you know, and Kian's on like camps and stuff. He's really like interactive, and he buzzes around, and he'll go go to the sauna, go to the pool, and like, you know, go and play cards in the evening and that. And I think like when he goes home, he just like saves up a whole camp's worth of energy, doesn't he? You know, when he's home for a couple of weeks, and then just goes into hibernation. So he's got a year of hibernation now, it looks of it.
Well, you can be pretty grumpy when I remember Phil and I like to go and animate him even when he is at home. He doesn't take to that very well. Like, he whipped me once with a belt to get him out of his bedroom, and it actually drew blood. I started bleeding.
I know.
You know, when you push him to the point of anger, it's actually quite funny. But looking at some of the news reports, like, are you underplaying like how big an impact that delay had on your career? Because a lot of them were saying like you actually considered whether it was time to like hang up your wheels now or whether you were going to continue for another year.
Oh yeah, big time I did. To be honest, the whole thing kind of hinged on. We had like a big group phone call the day after the Olympics got confirmed. I can't remember what day it was. Like, was it early last week? The day after the Olympics got postponed, we had a big group call with like Ian Dyer, our coach, headed it up. Lawrence was on the line, and you know, the nutritionist. PT Pete was on the line, and all the boys. And I think Ian quite understandably sort of like said, right, you know, there's the Europeans in October. Let's push on for that. Let's get going. Let's get motivated again. Let's give us something to kind of ride for. And to be totally honest, in my head, I was just like, I just can't do it. Like, I've literally got 4 months left of motivation and enthusiasm to like last me a lifetime. And I didn't say it on the phone at the time, but I was a bit like, oh man, I'm not sure if I got this. And I think maybe 72 hours later, I had another call, like individually with Ian and Lawrence. And I was just honest. I just told them like, that's how I feel about the Europeans. And I said, I didn't really know how the conversation was going to go, but I just told them like, I neither have the physical or mental capabilities to go full block, you know, for the next 15, 16 months. I said, if I'm going to make it, now's the time for me to just like throttle back, you know, do all the stuff that I've been just putting on the back burner, all the friends I've ignored, family. You know, I know you can't even go see them now, but literally little things like making a bit of time, like going to see, just speaking to people on the phone and, you know, sending people presents in the post. You just like, you know, with the academy and stuff and all that in the background as well. I just, I'm hoping that this will become like, I'm hoping that this will be like a good opportunity and even like a blessing in disguise. It's an opportunity just to say, all right, let's just collect everything. Let's sort out all your paperwork and housework, and then you can kind of restore that tank of enthusiasm and then go again in the winter.
You're making me feel shit now, because when I retired, I didn't start sending out presents in the post to people.
I'm expecting a present now.
Yeah, wait. Hang on, what day is it? I got 5 days to find a birthday present and send it down to my mum. So
that'll be all right. Yeah, yeah. Oh, okay. That's what you mean. Your mum's birthday and stuff like that. But in a way, like, do you find having the kind of ticking clock towards a final date like actually tougher than if you just decided on the day that you're going to retire? Because like I think sometimes a countdown can make it more of a mental stressor.
Yeah, I reckon. Yeah. In terms of what, Cal? Because you've obviously been there, haven't you? You know, in London, you kind of
Well, no,
I guess with Rio, like I was kind of like. It wasn't that I was going to retire afterwards, but I was kind of like this is it, and I don't have to think about this for a long time afterwards. But then, you know, like bits about like having a calendar and like checking off the days closer and closer. I think that would stress me out more. Like it was because you know when you're on like if you're on like a road ride and you're just looking flat straight ahead the whole time, it doesn't seem like the distance covers that far. But if you put your head down and then look up after about a minute, you're like, oh shit, I've actually covered a good bit of distance here. I'm closer than I was. But you know, when you're taking it in slowly, sometimes you can see a bit more of a drag. That was my take on it anyway.
Yeah, I'm going to think about that, Cal. That's an interesting thought, and maybe I'd got it wrong. Like in my head, it was just like, you know, if you do like a block of intervals on the turbo trainer,
yeah,
and you get to your last one, it's just like, you know what I mean? You can cope with anything. There's no amount of pain can crack in your last interval, and you know, 8 times out of 10, you do your best interval on the last one because you know it's your last, and you can put everything into it, knowing that you don't have to back it up with anything. That's kind of the way I was thinking about it, but I can see what you're thinking there.
Well, so how did you manage to turn it around? So you had the conversation with the coaches and stuff, saying like I don't have it, and then obviously you're not retired yet, so it must have turned around.
Yeah, well, it depended on what those two said. Like if those two said,
okay,
like if they'd have laid down the law and said, Ed, you're in the team, you're still going to make the team, you're still going to do the Euros. Like this is what it's going to take to be part of the team. The goalposts have moved and all that. You know, I'd have probably turned around and said, you know what, I'm going to need a bit of time to think about this. But as it happened, they were both pretty cool, and they just said, for me, it was the right thing to do. So fair play to them. And we basically set a plan, and like the plan was for the month of April to do like a 10 and a 15 and a 15 and a 20-hour week, but just trying to do it, you know, keep fit and enjoy it. Like, you know, literally do half of that on the mountain bike, and then the road rides, the 2 out of 3 of them unstructured, and then just like one proper road ride a week for the first week, and then the second week we do a bit of zone free and then a bit of threshold, and you know what I mean? So we can just sort of like just go out there and. Now, even like the notion of riding your mountain bike without the power cranks and heart rate monitor, just getting some timing and fitness. I mean, man, it's still an awful long way away. I appreciate you've got to stay fit and you can't build fitness overnight, but I mean, I've always believed if you're starting, Shane always said this as well, like you can pretty much turn anything around in 12 weeks. And I think he's right. You know, as long as you're fit and you're healthy and the right weight and all that, you can go from being whatever 80-90% to being on the best form of your life or the best form you're capable of being on in 3 months.
Well, talking about like turning stuff around, obviously the world champs. I don't know. I guess we're pretty disappointed from a results point of view, not necessarily a time point of view, but from a results point of view, because the boys still went out really quick, but it seemed like a whole bunch of other nations just set the world on fire.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think there's probably a couple of things you can say on that. I think the first thing is like we went well, but I do think we could have gone better. You know, that was probably about as good a ride in qualifying, at least as good a ride as we've done. One team on the track, conditions dependent, and all that. But that's what happens in the Olympic year. You know, you're always expecting to be like better than you've ever been. So we didn't do that bad a ride, which made it even more difficult to kind of accept that like there's 4 teams here, 3 or 4 teams at least that have like significantly outperformed us here. It's an interesting one. Are you disappointed or not? There's certain things I'm disappointed about. That said, there's always this notion like it's everywhere. The whole world like lives on it, and so because we're Olympic champions in team pursuit, and we have been for the past 3 cycles. It's like you're Olympic champions, and everyone expects, including yourself, if you let it happen, everyone expects you to go and get that same result, and you end up being in this boat where anything other than a win is a disappointment.
Yeah.
And that's a pretty tricky place to be. So, I mean, it depends how you want to look at it. It's like, it's really important at times like that to sort of like separate like what the dream is and what your goals are, you know? I kind of said it, and I keep saying to myself, because I believe it's a big thing. It's an old Steve Peters thing, but the dream is to go to Tokyo and get a gold medal. Are we the favourites for a gold medal? Nah, like the Danes are, and then the Italians, and then the Aussies and Kiwis are in there for the bronze right now. Like, we know we're going to step up, don't get me wrong. We know that, like, the Great Britain cycling team goes about its business in a very different way in some quite small but very key areas, you know, for the Olympic Games and nothing else. And so we know that'll bring us closer to the mix. But right now, even with all that, the Danish are the favourites for the gold medal. But it still means that that's our dream, you know? I still dream of getting that 4th gold. But the goals are to eat, sleep and train better than I've ever done before. And it's no more complicated than that. You know, we go out and get a gold medal, great, it'll be the best day of your life. And if you don't, you know, it's as long as you do all the goals, what else can you do?
Have you guys changed anything drastically in training-wise, or you just doing the same thing? Or what do you think you need to do to be able to beat the Danes?
We have changed. I won't say we've done anything drastic, but we've looked at doing things. At the end of the day, like, you know, me and Kian are a very different. We're a very different type of athlete compared to an Ethan Hayter or Charlie Tanfield. So we're working on, like, we're trying to individualize our training a little bit just to try and maximize the performance of, you know, each of us individually, and hopefully when you bring that together, I like, for example, I don't get much out of like doing the speed, the power work, the gym, and so on. Like, my biggest thing's fitness. I've got to be fit, you know. I get on the road, and you know, I feel like every time I go into the track, I'm just kind of like taking steps back in fitness, and you know, the opposite might be said for a different rider. So it's just, we're trying to look at it individually. Like, I do think that'll yield some improvements, yeah.
It's kind of a tricky balance, though, because I guess traditionally what's made us successful is, I say more so maybe with the sprinters, because we've had worse results over the past, was that, like, no matter how bad the results get, you kind of stick to the plan and push on. So is that kind of a conscious decision within the team that, like, we can't change everything we've done, we can't panic, we have to just kind of stick to the plan that we had?
Yeah, I know what you're saying, yeah. I think if you're on the right trajectory, you stick to the plan. If you kind of feel like you've reached a plateau, or you feel like you're in a position where you've got nothing to lose, then I think it's all right to change the plan. I don't feel bad about like where we're at. You know, at the end of the day, what do we do? A 350 there with me, Ollie Wood. And like, Ollie will tell you himself that he felt pretty terrible that week. Charlie was going really well, and Ethan felt good at best. I felt good at best. I never thought I was on the form of my life. And we still went up there and we qualified within a few tenths of what we did in the Olympic final in Rio. You know, without all the marginal gains, and you know, we've got new bikes coming, we'll have new skin suits, helmets, and all that. And it's hard to say it was a bad performance. What can you do? Like, you know, if the Danes rock up and they put 6 seconds in the world record.
Well, that's an interesting point, because they always talk about, like, you know, controlling the controllables, and if you show up and get spanked but you still went quick, then you kind of have to be happy with it. And it was interesting when we had Katie Archibald on a couple of shows ago, and she said, like, looking back, you know, she kind of quite freely admits that sometimes when they got a second, when they look that unhappy on the podium, they are actually that unhappy, even though they're second in the world. So, like, in terms of what you boys did, was there kind of any way to kind of pick yourselves up after that to say, like, we still did a good time, we're still in the mix, we're still in the game, or was it kind of seen as a massive disappointment because of the results? When
you're in that environment, it's, you know how it works, man. It's like, it's a very emotive environment, and like you in that sort of moment in time, even if you try really hard not to, you pretty much entirely base your entire self-worth and confidence and everything like that on your ability to win a bike race, going around a wooden ball dressed in lycra with your mates. And then as soon as you, it's ridiculous, isn't it? And then as soon as you step out of that arena a week later, you can, like, you can pick up the phone to Charlie or whatever and laugh about it and just say, "Oh man," but am I disappointed? No, I'm not, man. Like that, the previous 4 or 5 months, I believe that I conducted myself and all my teammates did, as best we could. We were out there in Portugal for literally half our lives. When we were back home, we were just in and out of the track. We did everything we did everything in our power to be as good as we could be. We all had, even if it was just a mental tick list of like, Charlie knows what makes him good. Ed knows what makes him good. Ethan knows what's good for him. Even not necessarily talking about the training here, talking about like what they're eating, when they're sleeping, are they doing any fun things outside of cycling, stuff like that. And I believe we all conducted ourselves well, and that's the result that it yielded. You live and learn, man. It's like, I don't know. I mean, I'm reluctant to say like we went out there and like cried ourselves to sleep, because we didn't, man. It's like, I like to think that I've won a few big races in the past, and I've done an awful lot. I've lost an awful lot more. Like so many, it's unreal. I've been lucky that I've got it right in the 3 big ones in the past, but I've never won a Commonwealth Games. I've lost an awful lot more World Championships than I've won. And I don't know, it's like, I like to think I'm big enough to not base my entire self-worth on how well we did in one particular race. And that will hopefully go forward in the future, If I'm lucky enough to make the team in Tokyo, we'll give it everything we got, and I like to think I'll be happy with whatever that yields.
And so I guess like is another kind of slightly positive spin on it that, say like you've had a long career, like you've won lots of races, you lost tons of races as well. Like does this in terms of like a motivating factor, given that we were talking about you possibly retiring and saying you got like 4 months of that kind of solid effort in there, does that result of Worlds like motivate, demotivate, or has no influence?
Right now, I feel really good, and I'm starting to think that maybe I need to make this into a good thing. The isolation aside, it's difficult for everyone, but man, like I just feel like mentally I'm getting fresher and fresher every day. It's like I wake up in the morning whenever I want. I really enjoyed like not having a great deal of structure, to be honest. I wake up in the morning, I've still got more than enough motivation to go do my 10 or 20 hours a week on my mountain bike and my road bike, and I'm enjoying it. I'm enjoying the fact that I ain't gonna have to like spend my life in an airport or like put my gears on a track bike, and every cloud. At this point in time, I'm pretty happy, and I'm hoping that I get to October, November, December, like thinking, man, you know what I really fancy doing today? It's like going back down the track and changing my chainring a million times and smashing around there with the boys. Because like I honestly think that it's like you both do. It's like it's hard Olympic cycle. You're on that treadmill, aren't you? And you're just constantly working away. It feels like you're going nowhere sometimes. And, just as you feel like you can't take it anymore, like the pressure's kind of lifted off you and like the form starts coming and off you go. Don't get me wrong, like Cal, I'm totally open-minded to the fact that there's an ace team of like lads in the team pursuit that are younger than me and that really want it just as much. And this might be like, I might have missed my opportunity there. I'm open to that as well. I just want what's best for the team. I'll put my best case forward, but ultimately, it is what it is.
Yeah. So going back to the team, like it sounds like a little bit insensitive to be talking about this already, but there's been comments in the press about whether this delay is beneficial for some and not for others. Do you think, like for the team, that 1 year delay is going to be beneficial? I guess the kind of the bit that's pointing towards that is there's a lot of time to make up, and you've got more time to make it up now.
Yeah, it is, and man, I don't know how to say this without being too controversial. But I've always kind of thought, to be honest, we do this final like Olympic push, and it's all a little bit. I don't necessarily feel like we have the time to. We don't necessarily have the time to realize these gains that we can make. In the final Olympic part, the final part of the Olympic cycle, we get. How it is. We throw our whole budget at one race every 4 years, and sometimes I kind of feel like, here you go, there's a new bike, skin suit, whatever, and I just kind of feel it's a little bit too little, too late, and I mean, it's out there already. We had teething problems with bits and bobs, and in my head, if we could have all that stuff with 12 months to go, that'd see us through, and I genuinely think that'd give us time to realise the gains we can make out of this stuff. So I think that's been an issue in the past, yeah.
No, fair enough. I think going back to where we were before 2016, where we were kind of up against it, we would have taken a couple extra months, but like a year is a bit of a head fuck, to be honest. But yeah, maybe that gives you guys enough time to kind of pull it back, I guess. So I believe we have some questions from Instagram and or Twitter, which
is this like live now? Is it then?
Yeah, we live.
No. Yeah, we are live. Yeah.
All right.
So Phil's collected them all and is going to read some of them out.
It's from Sander Turner. Are you still on 2 liters of Coke a day in isolation, or have you stopped drinking?
Mate, you never believe it. I was telling Kath the other day, our nutritionist, I'd stopped drinking Coke.
Have you?
Yeah.
How do you feel about it? Or how do you feel in yourself?
Yeah, great. My gut health feels amazing.
What, so you're telling me at the Olympic final you're not going to have some Coke?
Nah, I'll get back on it again. For this period of time, I think it's a good opportunity to sort of like have a little detox, if you like.
We did the whole Diet Coke, full fat Coke test for Phil, and he insisted he could tell the difference.
I got it right the first time round, but then
try it on your bike. Do a 4-hour ride, and then have a litre of Coke, and then do the final hour, and then have a litre of Diet Coke, and then do the final hour, and then that's a proper Coke test.
No, but he was giving it the big talk about how he can definitely taste the difference and how he'd never drink Diet Coke.
Got it right as well. But then anyways,
hey, fair play.
We also got a question from Greg, who actually helps us with our 5 Rings coffee. So shout out to him. He's a bit behind.
Oh
the
yeah,
scenes.
big shout out to him. Well done.
Helped us a lot. What's your favorite local route?
I mean, the only time I've ever seen Ed out is when he's sitting by a petrol station after he's just bonked and he's filling himself full of Coke and sweets to try and get home.
Favorite, I do like the Strines. So around here, there's it's notorious for just being half of it's 20% off, half it's the 20% down. It takes you right over towards Sheffield. The Strines, I like going over the Strines and then Woodhead, Cat and Fiddle, all that. I like those roads around there, like the top of the Peak District. So I head out there from home first. But right now, to be honest, I'm just enjoying the mountain bike. Anything off road.
John Kroom is asking. Is it true you thought about shortening your collarbones in surgery to become more aero? Is that actually true?
No.
Well, to be fair, like if you see in the 2 Series, you've always got this like massive, huge, broad shoulders. So like you look like Michael Phelps or something like that.
Yeah, I have got wide shoulders, and for sure they're not helpful aerodynamically. But the answer is no. I've never considered it. The story is, now this is a long time ago. It's probably like 2008 or 2009 or something. I had my phone was ringing, and I looked over, and Dave Brailsford was on the phone. And like usually when Brailsford rings, it's not a good thing. So I was like, oh man, like what have we done wrong? And I answered my phone, like sweat pouring down my forehead, just preparing for the world's biggest bollocking. And he started off by saying, "Oh, I'm really sorry, Ed." And I was like, "Why?" And I was just expecting to say, "Because you're off the squad." But he said, "No, I was doing some sort of." He said he was doing some conference down in London, and or some like after dinner speech or whatever. And they were talking about aerodynamics and marginal gains or whatever. And I think he just threw it in there as like a little anecdote or whatever, and it wasn't supposed to be taken seriously, but I believe there might have been a journalist or something in the room, and he wrote it down, and the next day there probably wasn't anything going on, so it was like, I wouldn't quite say it was headline stuff, but it was like, it was in the sports pages that apparently I'd said that I'd broke my collarbone, and of course it wasn't true, it was just, they threw it out there, and he apologised and he rang about it, and I was like, mate, don't worry about it, like, no stress, but like, it must be over 10 years since that was originally like said, and people are still asking me about it now. Yeah.
Well, you keep up with the news, so I'm sure it would have devastated you when you read that in the sports section.
yeah.
Is that even a procedure you can get done? Has anyone ever had the collarbone shortened?
You must be
Well,
able
you got to
to.
remember, like, no surgeon in the right mind would like knowingly shorten somebody's collarbones.
Yeah, like a
Wait,
plastic
you mean
surgeon
yeah,
probably does it.
yeah.
You reckon?
Yeah, in Ukraine they'll like break your femurs and extend them over time, so you get like an extra inch or two on your height.
You're joking.
Nah, it takes like months as well.
I think about this. You've had bad back surgery. So when I was in desperate need of back surgery, like you had to pretty much be in constant pain and with permanent nerve damage till a surgeon would be like, "Yeah, I'm going to operate on you now," because, well, I was led to believe most surgeons just won't operate on you unless you absolutely need it. You know, it doesn't matter if you've got the Olympics in 8 months or whatever. Like their priority is they'll use surgery as the last resort, because basically if they operate on someone that doesn't need an operation and it goes wrong, that's a bad thing, right? A very bad thing. So why I can't imagine there's anyone out there that'd be like, right, we're going to cut you up, shorten your collarbones, put you under for a few hours, and hope you come back round, because things don't always go well in surgery and operation and that. It's something, a sort of thing you take lightly, and be like, yeah, welcome back to the world with your collarbones like that. I just how many surgeons have you prepared to do that? I don't know, but yeah, it happens.
Jump on Laura Kenny's bike and off you go.
Yeah, man. Can you imagine how fast you'd be with the aerodynamics of that, though? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you need to get yourself to Ukraine, mate, if you want to get some dodgy surgery.
You've got time to recover and make the game, so.
Nah, mate, I just don't want it that bad, honestly.
Imagine if he comes back and his arms are just literally attached to his neck.
Nah. I'd rather be able to ride my mountain bike for the next 30 years, to be honest.
Yeah, fair enough.
All right, so we'll come to an end on this one. Ed, do you want to give a quick shout out to Clancy Briggs and stuff before we wrap up?
No, not really. Just been good to see you boys, and it's just been good to see you boys, and hope everyone's staying safe and well out there. And
yeah, well, no, go on. Tell parents and kids how they can sign up.
Go visit clancybriggs.com, isn't it?
Clancybriggs.co.uk is the website. We've got a lovely website there, and it'll be on the social media, like Twitter and Instagram, and I don't even know the social media names off by heart, but you'll find it pretty
type
easy.
in Clancy Briggs and it will come up, pretty sure.
Yeah, and I hate plugging stuff like that, but I believe we're onto something good that'll benefit everyone involved, and just trying to do something different.
All right, well, thank you very much, everyone.